Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C., the podcast where we dive into stories behind success, uncovering lessons learned and the insights gained by leaders and innovators in the business world. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. Welcome. My guest today is Jeff Diaknakofo. From his early days as a young entrepreneur to his current role as a seasoned business owner and advocate for empathetic leadership, Jeff's journey is one of resilience, growth, and purpose. We're going to explore empathetic leadership, its transformative power, and creating space for employees to heal from personal struggles, offering fresh perspective on leadership's true essence. Let's get started. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Yeah, excited to be here with you and with your audience. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm excited to go through. I've prepared a whole bunch of questions for you because reading your bio and going through everything that you've done, there's a ton to get through. So I want to get right into it. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey from starting your entrepreneurial venture at such a young age to becoming a seasoned business owner and industry expert?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up around entrepreneurism. I saw it from really both of my grandparents. I saw it in my uncles, and it was kind of like it was conversation around the family dinner table, if you will. So I feel like that's kind of where it started. I started cutting grass and washing cars in the neighborhood we lived in because I wanted to go on this big church retreat, and my mom and dad didn't have the money for it. I think it was like $1,500.
Mhm.
So I had to buy that plane ticket on my own, and that was at like 13, 14.
Wow.
That continued to get a car. Uh, and then I spent like 2 years of my adult life on a W-2 in the corporate world and didn't really like that. Got chewed up and spit out, had a pretty big rise, but then a pretty big fall at the same time.
Mm.
And just decided, you know what? I got a taste of this business thing. I got a taste of this freedom. I don't want to ever go back to the corporate life. And I got teamed up with somebody who was servicing national accounts in the furniture and mattress industry, and took off with that. Ended up buying one of my customers, which is now one of my businesses that I own, a retail mattress store business. And it's been a fast 22 years since then.
Wow.
And here I am today, built a career of expertise and authority in that niche, and have spent a lot of time studying marketing and how to market businesses and run businesses. So I'm an open book. That's quickly my journey.
Awesome. So I was reading your bio, and one of the things I really wanted to touch base was you've experienced childhood trauma
Mhm.
and sexual abuse,
Yep.
and now you share your story openly and authentically. What do you hope to achieve or accomplish by sharing your stories with others?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of digging right in there, which is
Yeah,
perfectly
I don't mess
fine.
around.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine with me because I've reached this point in life where I feel it's my calling to share that part of my story.
Mhm.
I'm always, as a guest, I'm always real delicate with the shows I go on to make sure it's right for the audience, make sure it's right for the people. So I'm actually glad you asked, because the likelihood that somebody out there listening to this has suffered that same abuse as I am, whether you're a man or a woman, the stats are just there, sadly. So for me, that abuse was really rough. I've come to accept it as something that happened in my life. There's these quotes that are out there that we all often hear. I'm not responsible for the past, but I am for my future. And I've accepted that this is something that happened. I've actually looked for bigger meaning in it,
Mm.
and I believe that I was put within that path of destruction because I have the shoulders here to carry it, the heaviness of that, because other young men didn't. Two young men years ago sadly committed suicide as a result of that abuse. And I was that person to stop that cycle. That's the way I look at it. And I know that's heavy to say, and it might not be for everybody. But for me now, fast forwarding to the time I'm in now, sharing on shows like this, Sonia, with you and your wonderful audience, it's to share a light and a beacon that there's hope on the other side of that. Because
Mm.
yeah, I carried that burden negatively for a long time. It affected personal outlook. It affected business outlook. It affected how I interacted with my wife and my children and my employees and business partners. Um, and so I stand here today really more embodied. I know what I want and I'm getting there. And that's that hole in my heart that was ripped open from all of that. It's slowly but surely, every time I get to share in a show like this, feels like it builds and repairs itself. Uh, but for me, at this point, it's about being an example of courage and just being here in this moment and
Hmm.
sharing that story that you can be successful, you can be all these things you see, even with that kind of damage. And one more thing, if I may,
Hmm.
um, I don't want any of your listeners to weigh this out. I'm not in a contest with you. You know, my past is my past and your past is your past, or maybe there's a present thing you're dealing with. We're not in a contest with each other. Whatever it is that's affected you, whatever wasn't your responsibility within your past, we don't need to weigh that out. It doesn't need to be a contest. It can just be yours. But I want you to accept with me and be encouraged with me that going forward, it is our responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, that was one thing that, like, when I was putting this together, I was like, I definitely want to talk about this because you're right. Statistically, this is something that happens to both men and women. I
Mm-hmm.
do feel that, particularly women are just more open, and we share and we have conversations with one another. Women build networks of support for each other. And I feel some men do, I'm not saying they don't, but not as much. So I felt like this would be a really good place to for you to sort of share and be vulnerable. No one's perfect. Everyone has a past, but you've obviously, I'm sure you're still dealing with it, but you've obviously overcome some of that trauma, and it's now made you who you are, and it's part of you in a way. How are you now with the trauma, and how does it affect your day to day?
You know, for me, it's really become, uh, and it's a chapter in my book, actually,
Mm,
that the title of the chapter is called New Cuts Do Not Equal Old Scars. Right. And so when I said a few minutes back that, my past really framed my relationships, whether that was personal or business, um, I really didn't understand back then that what people would bring to me, whether it was an objection, a concern, a question, something as simple as a question, I would greet subconsciously as an attack,
mm,
whether that was an attack, on my idea, an attack on my personality, of my character. But in one word, it felt like an attack. It felt like abuse.
mm,
And you can understand where that comes from.
yeah.
But once I realized I'm safe, this instance isn't that abuse. This question isn't that person, maybe in your listeners' past, this new thing, this new objection, this new problem isn't that person. It's not that moment.
Mm,
And I just began to say that to myself, kind of out loud, but in my head. Or if I could say it out loud, I would. I'd say it's not that. It's
hmm.
not the basement, because that's where a lot of my abuse happened, was
Yeah.
in our friend of our family's basement. Um, it's not the basement, is what I would say to myself.
Right.
And just kind of like that reframe and that pause would begin to allow me to say, okay, well, what is this? What is that moment? What is this moment? And no, it's not an attack. It's not meant to hurt. It's not meant to be a problem. It's just meant to be what it is. It's this salesperson on my team bringing me a question because they don't understand a product. They're not me.
Right.
They don't quite understand what was in my head bringing this into the mix.
Mm,
My kids don't understand. My wife doesn't understand. And so new cuts don't equal old scars would be the biggest thing I could share with your people. Would be try to just understand the moment you're in, and that the moment you're in isn't that past hurt.
hmm.
Subconsciously, it might feel like it, but consciously, you have the opportunity to say, it isn't that.
Right. So in your book, you just talked about it. It's called The Space for Leadership.
Yep.
You talk about empathetic leadership. How do you define empathetic leadership, and did that come from your trauma?
Yeah. I try to be and work to be a leader in ways that I never got. So, at a very deep personal level, when I tried to share my abuse as a teenager with my family, I was rebuffed, to outright told, well, that couldn't have happened. You were too young for the way you described the physical things that happened as a result of that abuse. That couldn't have happened. And I don't want to get too graphic on the show, but you know, uh, at that age, to be from the leaders in the room, right, to be put off, brushed off, not cared for in that way was, damaging on a level that I think I still have some things to think about and work through as time will go on, right?
Mhm.
But again, I'm completely comfortable and okay to stand here in this moment with you and with your listeners and talk about this to help other people to live as an example of courage here. But empathetic leadership to me is about really giving to people and creating this space to bring them in and around you. Once you understand what it is you want, which I've shared as closing that hole in my heart. Like, we get asked that question a lot. What do you want in life? And people will say, well, I want a big house. I want freedom. I want vacations. I want money in the bank. Listen, wants to me are like this elevated level of need. And really, we don't need a whole lot as human beings. But what we do need is to feel whole. What we do need is to feel not hurt. What we do need is to feel fulfilled. And if you got this big gaping hole in your chest, like I've felt I've had, it's really hard to build on that because everything just drops through, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we understand what we want and then we understand our purpose, which I've touched on about me living as an example of courage in a world full of hurt. I mean, there's no better, if you're a business opportunist and you feel connected with anything I've said, there's no better opportunity right now than to stand as an example of courage because our world's so very hurt right now. And again, I think in divine timing, this is why I'm here today to share this message with you. So those two things, want and purpose, create that stage and that space for leadership to bring others in and around your purpose. And for me, empathetic leadership is giving people the things, the most visceral, needed, highly connective, emotional things I didn't get. I'm trying to give those to the people around me every day.
Okay, I like that. How has that transformed your approach to business?
Yeah, I mean, it's about finding great people, knowing what great people look like, knowing how you can get great people to come to you. And if I could, something literally before I got on our call to record our show today, may I share something right from my business that came through?
Sure, of course.
So I'm going to have to read from my phone because it literally just came through, which again, I don't in any way, shape, or form view this as a coincidence.
Hmm.
I think that this is all a grand design interconnected thing. So that this is from my business partner. Uh, Subject line: Chad, heartfelt moment with the customer. Chad made a nice sale to an older lady, connected with her. Well, writing up the sale at the desk, he was expanding a little on his family story, how he came to work with us. And in a nutshell, shared with her how we helped bring him out of a really rough, dark time and give him a stable life again. He got a little choked up telling that story, a nice, heartfelt moment. That moment was shared across the sales desk of a retail mattress store in 2024, at a time in which my online competition is basically planting the flag in the ground saying we've killed off selling mattresses in a retail environment. No one would ever go in. It's terrible people in there. You're going to get ripped off.
Right.
And yet here was this connective moment, likely over the fact that his family had was a well-known furniture store back in the day. So very possible our customer used to be his family's customer going way back. And they were a second or third generation store. But I'm so very proud of that moment
Yeah.
to have given Chad the comfort level to come work with us again because he swore off the industry. A copy of my book sits at our sales desk.
Mm,
I don't, when you're in business, you don't have to just hide behind your logo.
right.
Your logo isn't your identity. You as your business are your identity. We have so many tools today: Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. If you're just putting out your logo and your sales offerings and your prices and your products, you're missing a tremendous opportunity to connect at such a deep level with people and really create a unique spot in your market.
Yeah.
And we did that today, not only with our customer, but with my team member who Chad's just a great guy. And I'm so glad we have that story now to share.
Yeah, I was reading the other day that especially with the platforms like TikTok, people are not watching, information that's pre built and meditated and organized. People are watching the videos that are getting the most views are the things that are authentic on the
Mm-hmm.
go. People want authenticity, and what you're saying now sort of describes that to me. I mean, like, there's nothing like seeing someone face to face and being vulnerable and sharing and having a moment with someone. I
Yeah.
feel like we've lost a lot of that, especially since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing those stories and seeing that people are still connecting and being able to be that way is great.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. I mean, the greatest things that I've done in business haven't been getting big sales, and I've had that. Hasn't been getting accolades. We have those. It's those moments with Chad. Um, it's having people move on from our company. We've had a handful over the years move on to bigger and better things, things that maybe we couldn't provide.
Yeah.
We had a gentleman named John. He's Catholic, so he's got a bunch of kids. Seems like every time we turned around when he was working with us, he was having another kid or his wife was. And it just reached a point where health insurance was real important. Getting away from retail hours was real important. And we just couldn't give that to him because of the company
Yeah.
we are. But we were so happy to transition him into an opportunity elsewhere locally.
Yeah.
And we do business together to this day. Just last year, we had somebody give notice. He wanted to move out of state to be with family. His college age kids kind of cemented their life in New York State, and he just wanted to be more close to them. We had a great 4 month transition, sent him off with a very nice king size mattress as a parting gift. And to this day, we still talk.
Hmm.
If you're not focused on leveling up your humans and creating those stories and connections, you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
And profits is part of that. It's a profits, I think, are a byproduct of goodness. And you just get that opportunity when you do good, more good comes back.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, you mentioned shedding the survivor mindset on a human level. Could you elaborate on what that means to you and how has it influenced your personal and professional life?
Yeah, I like to say I'm a victor over the grave of my childhood abuse, right?
Yeah.
Um, that might sound a little morbid to some, but that's how I really view it. I can stand here today confidently, smile on my face, right? I don't have the biggest smile that's out there. Oftentimes I think I'm smiling and it looks like I'm ready to like fight somebody, but I'm smiling on the inside. And I can do that in rooms and on stages and presentations. Um, to me, that's what victory looks like. It's being
Mhm.
confident to share it even with one person. You don't have to be a Tony Robbins type on a stadium stage. If you have the ability to impact one person, that's standing as a victor over whatever it is that's in your past. It is that living example of courage. Uh, you know, life is not something that we have a guidebook for. Uh, as I said, we can't. Most are not responsible for their past.
Yeah.
Okay, um, but everyone can be responsible for their future. And just saying to yourself, I'm claiming victory over this versus I survived this is powerful. Just those two, the word difference there is
Yeah.
powerful. I was listening to another podcast, a well-known author, psychologist on the ways we deal with harm and hurt and traumas and just living in a constant replay of I was there, I'm there, this happened without a sight on what you're doing going forward could actually be really damaging. And you just stay in this cycle.
Yeah.
So, again, planting that victory flag, even if it's just being able to say it to your spouse, to your best friend, maybe your children are going through something similar to you went through. taking that first success, planting that first flag over it, claiming that first victory is really powerful. And then
Yeah.
you're not a survivor anymore. You're just now you're stacking wins,
Yeah. I
putting
like that.
victories on top of one another.
Oh, I love that. Putting
Yep.
victories on top of one another. That's a good quote.
Yep.
I feel like, eh, trauma can come in so many shapes and forms, and obviously yours is on the extreme side. But I feel like, what you said is so right because if you don't put in the effort to um, deal with the trauma, then you could spend the rest of your life just creating a vicious circle around it and never really truly finding happiness because you're going to be living in that basement for the rest of your life, right? So what advice do you have for people that are dealing with any type of trauma? What advice would you give them on, maybe the first step to working on getting out of it?
Yeah. If you're not at that spot to plant that flag and take that first step as an example of courage by sharing with somebody, verbally in
Mhm.
person. Yeah, the thing I did, and I forget if this was just a thought that I had on my own or if it came from somewhere. I wrote a letter. It's funny. I'm just kind of recalling this. Um, that I still have this letter. It's downstairs in my basement. Um, it was a letter to my abuser
Oh wow.
about all the damage, you know, uh, why, you know, um, what had to happen to you to perpetuate that, which in a way is empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, that would probably be my first thing to recommend. Get it out
What did
on
that
paper.
what did that do to you when you got it out on paper?
I did feel lighter. I felt some relief. Yeah, I mean, it still didn't make up for for really, um, I would say the damage of having the adults in the room not respond,
For
right?
sure.
Because there were some critical moments where things just should have gone different.
Mm,
And that's the other thing for me. That's really kind of a trigger, if you will, is when words and actions don't meet up. When the
right.
opportunity to do something doesn't happen, but the words are said, or the words are said, and then there's inaction. Um, that's a big one for me. And to this day, I still have to uh, be very cognizant of it. Uh, my we've got my father-in-law's got some health issues, and there's a very interesting dynamic in his life that exists, and there's going to be opportunity for tremendous drama,
Mm,
and I immediately went to like DEFCON 5, get the like just get the fists out and let's go, figuratively.
yeah.
And I had to take a step back after that conversation with my wife and say, hey, I want to just like pretend we can rewind that tape and cut it out and let's
Yeah.
start over. Um, but the words and actions thing is triggering for me, and for people to understand. I'm kind of rambling here. I apologize.
Okay.
Um, but get it out would be, get it out on paper. If your penmanship is bad and you want a
Type a
different,
note.
yeah, if you want a different sensory experience, speak it into your phone, and maybe that even helps. Maybe to hear the words out loud
Yeah.
could be a different sensory experience for you. But that would be the first step in dealing with it that I would
I mean, a
recommend.
lot of people say that like even just I feel like what you did was you were journaling in a way,
Yes.
right? And that's very therapeutic because it
Yep.
lets you, physically get your emotions out on paper and pen and read it over, and you sort of get to express how you feel, and it is a therapeutic method for a lot of people. So I think that's great. So for my next question, what strategies or practices do you employ to create safe space for healing and growth for both yourself and your team members within your business?
Yeah. I mean, for myself, it's always, what is this moment meant for? What am I to learn? What am
Mm,
I to see, feel, hear, understand, instead of why me?
right.
Okay. Um, that's really important to understand, because I think if we just perpetuate the why me questions, we immediately get back to just focusing on the past, replaying all of this negative stuff that we've created in our own mind, not to minimize anything that's happened negatively, but we take that negative moment and we recreate it, we repackage it, we make it, you know, uh, how many versions of the movie Fast and Furious are there now? 9,
Yeah.
right? So we have the original harm or the original hurt or the original thing, but man, our brains are powerful. We all of a sudden have 9 different versions of it, and we're the only one in the theater now watching it.
Mm,
I share this often with a family member of mine. I say, there you are in the IMAX again, full surround sound, big screen, cushy seats, and you're the only one playing out this story. Uh, Again, I don't say that to minimize things. I just say it because it's a reality.
yeah.
So if we go down that why me path, I think that's what can often happen. We just become the only one watching our story.
Yeah.
Instead, if we ask, what is this meant for? Again, I could sit here and say, you know, why me? Why that abuse? Instead, I came to ask, what was meant for me to be in that path?
Mm,
I physically got the broad shoulders. I have the strong shoulders. I have the fortitude to push forward. That
right.
first business, that first church retreat, that abuse was happening then. It was
Wow.
wrapping up, but it
Mm-hmm.
was happening then. For me, it's understanding what it was meant for me, and then what was meant for me out of this, and then translating that to business. Instead of saying, well, why don't they get it? Ask yourself, what as a leader am I not bringing forward for them to join with me and lock arms? It
Mm,
always comes back to us as leaders,
yeah.
because they're not us. The joke with anybody I work with, any of my business partners, and any of the things I do is I've kind of taught them a code word. Just say touchdown if I'm going too fast,
Ah,
because I like this. Like my thing is, I've already in my head given them the play, the count, the snap count, pass or run, and I've scored the touchdown. I'm 95 yards downfield from our own 5 yard line. And they're still back there, opposite side, wondering what the heck was the play? What this guy just do? Right. And so that's kind of the code word. And it's like, okay, yep, let me bring myself back. Again, as a leader, we have to make sure everybody's on the same page. We have to make sure they understand our vision. Why is it important?
mm,
And a lesson I learned the hard way, do these people want it? Or have we mistaken what their brilliance and genius is for something else?
mm, yeah. So you're a believer of the importance of getting out of your own way as a business owner.
Mhm.
What are some common obstacles that entrepreneurs face and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, great question. You know, if you aren't out of your own way, a good litmus test for this is, can you take a day off without any fires happening? Can you go on vacation and truly detach yourself? Like,
Mm,
could you leave your phone? Hard to leave your phone at home with boarding passes on your phone and all
yeah,
that stuff, Uber, Lyft, etc. Um, but could you leave it on airplane mode the
yeah,
whole time and not connect for communication? I can do those things. A year ago this month, I was recovering from a tremendous knee. My left leg was basically rebuilt. I was out of commission for 6 weeks. There were no fires. Business continued on. Everything was fine. You have to be able to develop systems, procedures, operating processes. People need to know what's going on. They need to know how to operate. Again, it's that football play scenario. They need to know the playbook. They need to
yeah.
know the snap count. They need to know this blocking schemes, and who's going to tackle who's responsible for the coverage here. You can tell I'm a football guy. I actually have
I saw the
Eagles,
football back there. Yeah.
prized Philadelphia Eagles footballs there. Uh, But whatever your analogy is, you have to give that to your people and then let them run the playbook. You be the head coach.
Mm,
And at the same time, you got to be able to step back in. Just this morning, I met with one of my VAs. It's kind of fallen off track a little bit. And I just reminded that their role in this place is for these functions. And I appreciate the creative input. So let me give you the outlet for that. But right now, your core competency for us is in content distribution. And I just reminded of here's the things. And then I looked at the process book that we have. I'm like, oh, yeah, over our last 9 months of working together, it's gotten a little muddy. I kind of put things in, he put things in.
mm,
And even I, as the big visionary, have a hard time kind of understanding this.
yeah.
So we got language barriers to cross, we got cultural differences to cross. So yeah, it's no wonder we got off course a little bit. But you don't freak out. You just have that ability to have open conversation and lead and coach and guide and have a goal of leveling up that human you're working with.
How do you like your bottom line is, you want to have a successful business and you have a team under you. How do you distinguish or go from being a boss to being a coach?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it goes back to what's your interest in that person being the best person they can be, right? Like a boss just looks at humans as people who do,
Mm,
all right? And we're in a great time for that because, quite frankly, we got a lot of automation and technology coming down the road. We have AI removing entire swaths of careers. So, if that's your thing to be a boss and a taskmaster and a drill sergeant, congratulations, you're in a fantastic time and place. You really are. If you're not swinging hammers, if you're not putting shingles on roofs, if you're not changing oil in cars, you really have an opportunity to just have robots do your bidding. So fantastic, and I'm happy for you. If you're interested in the human experience, beings, and leveling up the human beings in front of you, then you're a coach. Then you're extracting greatness from all of those players. To go back to the football thing, I mean, Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time, was not even really all that wanted at Michigan. He was a guy who had to fight for his spot, didn't start all 4 years. Okay. Um, got drafted sixth round pick in the NFL as a quarterback, which by and large, those draft picks at that position are relegated to being on the bench and being on 7 different teams in your career until you finally just fade away and go run a quarterback school back in your hometown.
mm,
But here's Tom Brady. And then Tom Brady wins a couple Super Bowls and he gets hurt, and the Patriots are still relevant. And that cycle replays itself over 20 years.
right,
And 5 Super Bowls later, the Patriots became the greatest dynasty in football ever. Yes, it's because of the talent, but it was also because of the coaching and the systems.
right.
Tom Brady's not the fastest guy out there. He wasn't even the best passer, but the system and the expectation and the standard of excellence was so high, and that was all led. And when you're clear on that, again, it goes back to what you want, your purpose, your mission. If you're clear on that stuff, everybody can connect to it and fall in line.
Yeah, I really like that. I love your analogies of football. I'm not a football fan. I don't know that
Right.
much about it, but when you're saying it, I totally understand.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I can't help it. I've played football. I coached youth football. My youngest son is in high school now, and he's on a path to play at a high level for college. So I'm
Yeah,
like, half my time is football talk anymore, it seems.
I'm a soccer fan.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, you got Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some other greats I don't know about because it's not a sport that I pay attention to. But again, those folks, the same things apply. You
yeah,
know, none of those people have arrived in the positions they're in just by coincidence. It's all been really intentional focus.
yeah. I like that. So you're an advocate for the idea of balance is overrated and that an intentional life by design is the goal. Could you share how you've implemented this philosophy into your own life and business?
Yeah. So the challenge I would have to people chasing balance is, you know, those brass scales that Lady Justice holds up, and it's the tray on each side.
Yeah.
So when they're perfectly balanced, what's the meter say? It says zero.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want zero of anything.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm crafting a great marketing asset, every ounce of my energy is in on that marketing asset in the work time that's allotted for it. And if it has to extend, I communicate that. Um, Likewise, if there's a tremendous opportunity to, say, take my youngest son to a football camp where he gets more exposure, and that means I have to miss 2 days working, so be it. I'm not going to worry about trying to balance it all out. I'm going to be all in where I'm most needed and where my excellence and brilliance is needed. Um, so I don't really chase balance. I chase what's most exciting for me. So for me, it's all about creative stuff. That's like my business
Yeah.
brain. It's creating things, processes, marketing, merchandise, in-store experiences. Um, so that balance thing, just try to be all in the moment and communicate to others why you're all in.
Mm.
A life by design, like for me, we're using technology to produce our time together and support our time together today. But I don't like technology. I actually got rid of a truck that I loved, my F-150, and I'm a Ford guy. But I got rid of it because it was a 2019, and it was just all the computer stuff failed me, and I was vastly frustrated with it. I
Mm.
didn't enjoy driving it. I sold it, and I got a 1996 F-250 diesel truck. And the thing is a pain in the butt. But I got to tell you, it takes me back every time I get into it to when I was in 11th grade, and I was in a spot in life where I felt very good. I like the truck. It's kind of a collector's truck now. I enjoy driving it. It's comfortable, but it's grumpy. It's old. It breaks, but I love it.
Yeah.
And then I take that truck to my campsite and I work at my campsite. And when it's not in Pennsylvania here, it's cold, but here in a month, I'll be up there a couple days a week. And now that Starlink's available in our area, I'll probably do my podcast show from up there. Get to do it outside at my campsite. Nature, I love that.
Yeah.
So you build things in that you love, and then you show people why it's important to you. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they get the courage to do that. What I didn't share, being in the position that I'm in with most people coming, not most people, some people coming on these types of shows, I didn't talk about a beach house, a sports car, or any of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I'm talking about old trucks and campsites because that's my thing.
Yeah.
The month of December for me here in Pennsylvania, that's about hunting. We have a lot of fun hunting we can do, and
Yeah.
largely the month of December, I'm off. It starts with Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, wraps up with Christmas, which is a lot of family time, and then in between, I'm in the woods.
Nice. I like that. I mean, I loved your whole thing about balance. I've had a lot of conversations on this podcast around work-life balance, and I'm a big believer of not chasing balance because I find that the minute you start chasing work-life balance, that's when it starts getting stressful for me because now I have to separate the two. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to separate the two because, I love what I do, so why should I turn it off
Yep.
just to make other people around me happy? And it makes me miserable. So, like you, I think it's just, finding and putting your energy at the moment and of what you're into, what you're really good at, and doing that really well. So, I love that analogy of the whole balance thing. I'm going to use that quite a bit, but
Yeah,
I like
please
that
do.
you I like that your point of view was different than the norm that I usually get, where people are like coming up with strategies on how to have a good balance because, if you don't, then you're not normal and there's something wrong with you. So I really like
Right.
that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I have a couple more questions before we
Yeah.
wrap up, but many businesses prioritize building their brand. And I know you're, a guru in marketing, so let's talk about that a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, uh, some people would argue that focusing on branding first is a waste of time. Can you explain your perspective on this and what you believe should be prioritized instead?
I would agree with what you shared about how, focusing to build the brand first, I feel is a joyless, fruitless effort unless you are fortunate enough to have access to tens of millions of dollars of
Mm,
equity venture money. And the only goal there is to create, new sales and perpetuate that new sales cycle at the expense of everything, including profit.
right.
In all my time, and I sit on a board of a franchise group right now. I run two seven-figure companies. I have 7, 8 figure friends. I have people in my network that are 10-figure people. I've never come across one person that is willing to sacrifice millions without profit. And so, to me, my definition of building a brand is built one sale to one customer at a time. And your brand becomes what they say about you.
Mm,
So if I use my retail mattress store as an example, because that's the thing I have the very most control over, we're the guys that change the way people feel about mattress stores. We make it a fun, educational, comfortable, no pressure environment.
mhm.
Um, we actually have gotten that phrase. This is a little sidebar. We've gotten the no pressure phrase so much in our Google reviews that, and I've taken this to the highest level of Google that I can find. And when I touch on this, I mentioned, so if anybody listening to this has a highest level of Google contact that I've yet to get to, we have so many no pressure comments that Google has aggregated those and has put at the top the summary words pressure.
Oh,
And I've said, wait a minute, you're Google, you have AI technology. You can't tell that people are, they all say no pressure.
oh,
Okay. So just as a little aside, we
yeah,
have so many people saying that it's aggregated it. Now it hasn't worked to my advantage, but people get it.
yeah.
Our brand is no pressure. Our brand is education. Our brand is confirming and affirming the right fit. Our brand is great experience. When we have multiple reviews that say, I thought I was going to be dealing with a used car salesperson. It was anything but.
I could see
Your
that.
Yeah, your brand gets built one sale at a time, and what that customer, client, patient says about you,
Hmm.
that's how you build a brand.
Yeah. So building a business with purpose seems to be the core of your belief. How do you integrate purpose into your business model? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to do the same?
Yeah. Understand that you can't go it alone. You
Mm,
need your community. So if you're an online entrepreneur, there's a community. I know they exist. I mean,
yeah.
people aggregate in corners of the internet, so you can do things for your community. What we do at the store, we have a podcast show, uh, and it's a community focused podcast show where we're shining light on charities, local heroes, businesses with a great story of giving back and a culture of giving back and supporting our community. Uh, as an example, just yesterday we had on that show um, a local metal recycling company that keeps a lot of stuff out of landfills. So
Mm,
while they're very business focused, and personally the owners I know are very philanthropic in our community. Um, so from a company perspective, they're not really focused on charitable contribution, but they are focused on impacting our community and
hmm.
keeping stuff out of landfills.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, are they some interesting folks. And you've got third generation owners mixing with 20 and 22-year olds. They have TikTok. They have a TikTok account. Some of their videos have 400,000 views, and
Wow.
it's all about metal recycling. They're literally standing outside in dirty, greasy clothes in front of a pile of scrap metal behind them. And this video had 423,000 views. It's connective because
Hmm.
they're caring about their community. You can't just be someone that takes by selling into your community only. And that's what you're doing at the core of it. You are taking from the community. Now, you're not taking and running away with the money. You're
Yeah.
delivering back the service, the goods, the expertise, but you are taking. What's your deposit? What's your give back into the community,
Hmm.
in your community? And I'm using community as a more nebulous umbrella word,
Yeah.
but I would challenge anybody listening to think about that. What is your give back?
Hmm.
Um, for us at the store, it's the show. And, as an example, when the charities come on, we'll often do a donation to the charity. We'll make a connection, or we'll just we're very connected to getting people out of homelessness. Uh, so last year we donated 34,000-ish dollars worth of mattresses to our local off the streets charity.
Mm.
Um, so it doesn't have to be that big, and it can be bigger. There are people doing that bigger than
Yeah.
us, but that's what we're able to do. As long as you're focused on giving back, that's important to me.
Yeah. Okay. So my last question, you talk about shifting from a desire for success to a position of significance in business.
Yeah.
How can business owners make this transition, and what impact does it have on their customers and communities?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's a large example of it is what I shared about Chad a few minutes back.
Yeah.
You know, show me a business that's doing things like that, where you give your process allows for the opportunity for that kind of connection across the sales desk. That's significant.
Hmm.
You know, building in something like our community podcast show, that has significance, because I know what it costs to produce a half hour of quality video. And
Yeah.
we make like any podcast host, and Sonia, you're doing a great job. You make your guests look great, right? So
We try.
we make our guests look great. And for those smaller charities, which often is somebody just starting out because something bad happened. We had a gentleman on who there's a gap that exists for female veterans and having death benefits because his
Oh.
wife passed from cancer. Come to find out, the VA doesn't really have any burial thing for service members who pass that aren't currently serving,
Oh.
unless you've hit uh, your retirement, your full retirement benefit,
Hmm.
right? A lot of people would think you would, but you have to have your 20 years in. So he does a charity just like that. And actually, we help them through that profile. We help them actually give their first funeral benefit charitable donation to a family.
Mm.
That's significance. We gave them that opportunity because we produced that video. They had that opportunity. For us, it was just another show. For them, it was everything. So you can do these little things that you think are just, oh, that's easy for us. But for somebody else, it's so important. So find what that is.
Yeah.
Find those opportunities and stretch to kind of share your stage, share your space, your expertise with people, and that'll breed its own significance.
Okay. I mean, we're out of time now, but thank you so much for
You're
coming
welcome.
on. And first off, I want to thank you for being authentic and sharing your story and opening space for other people to learn and maybe help them overcome some similar traumas to yours, and also for sharing how you've overcome it and you found not success business wise, but you found life success. I'm going to call it that.
Yeah.
Where you seem like you've overcome a lot, but you found some peace, and it's giving you a beautiful life. I love to see that. I really enjoyed our conversation,
Thank you.
and I'm super happy for you that you're at the place where you are now, and I hope that our listeners who may be struggling with something similar or just business wise get something out of this conversation. So thank you so much, Jeff. I really enjoyed you sharing this with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you for allowing me to, as I said, fill that hole up one little kind of fill in at a time. Right. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no problem. I appreciate it. And that's a wrap. I want to thank Jeff for joining us today. His journey is an example of resilience and leadership. I'm grateful for his openness in sharing his journey from childhood trauma to being an entrepreneur and running his business with empathy. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and join our community on social media. I would love to hear from you. Leave a review and tell me what topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace change and innovation with tenacity. Keep striving, keep innovating, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to bringing you more inspiring conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, remember to chase your dreams with tenacity.